Hello trainers, Professor Palm here, and welcome to the end of Summer Splash. I've had a wonderful time teaching all of you so many things about water-type Pokemon. There are so many out there. This is a great way to beat the horrible heat. Summer's fun, but boy is it hot. So let's end things on a fun note. Today, let's go grab our old, good, and super rods, and let's go fishing! Before the 9th generation got rid of it, fishing was a key staple in all of the core series games, and it was also one of my favorite things that I got to do in the game. I loved using one of my 3 rods, throwing out my line, and hoping to get something really good on the other end. Oftentimes when we go fishing, we can get something pretty normal or pretty good at the end of the line. But if you really have the patience, sometimes you can fish up something amazing at the end of the line. That's exactly what Unova taught us. Well, there are a lot of things that live in the water, so you have to be very careful what you fish for. With so many Pokemon that live in the water, you never know what's gonna be at the end of your line. There could be something good, or there could be something pretty meh. While the fishing, unfortunately, is no longer a thing, I'm happy to say that the 2 Pokemon that originally made fishing a lot of fun have never left. In fact, they've been here for almost every single region. I'm of course talking about the fish and sea serpent themselves, Magikarp and Gyarados. Now, these Pokemon are so different from one another, but to me, this really shows just how powerful evolution is. It also shows just how dangerous and how much fun fishing can be. You know what's really funny about this line? A lot of us really cannot stand Magikarp, because all it just does is flop around, jump, hop, and just do a few splashes and does nothing, but just stays there and never goes away. Well, that's the line for you in a nutshell, because Gyarados and Magikarp have been here since the beginning. They've never left. In fact, I think that when Generation 10 comes, we'll see them once again. I think evolution is one of the coolest things in Pokemon, and seeing how Magikarp turns into Gyarados is amazing. It goes from being a flopping fish that can't even swim to save its life, to being one of the strongest Pokemon ever from the sea. But I think with all the insults and everything Magikarp had, it pent them up, because when it becomes Gyarados, it becomes one of the most vicious Pokemon ever. Seriously, this thing destroys everything around it. I guess you should be careful of who you pick on. I think if I am to be honest, the one thing I've always had a problem with this line is the fact that Gyarados is a water and flying type Pokemon. Don't get me wrong, I love flying type Pokemon, but I've always seen Gyarados as a dragon. In fact, I think even Magikarp could have been a good dragon type Pokemon. However, I do see why it was not, mainly because they wanted to keep dragon as a very limited typing back in the day. Something else that Magikarp and Gyarados have done is that they were the Pokemon that introduced us to one of the most amazing things ever. Shiny Pokemon! That's right. If you remember at the Lake of Rage, there was a red Gyarados swimming. That was, for a lot of us, our introduction to what shiny Pokemon are. In fact, shiny Pokemon are so well loved that we have shiny hunters and even shiny collectors out there. So, thank you Magikarp and Gyarados for introducing us to one of the greatest staples ever. There really is a lot of great things to talk on with these Pokemon, so let's get to it. But before we do that, I want to thank fellow subscriber, Puppy Sparkles, for the request of this video. I know that you've been waiting for this video for a very long time, so I just want to give you a very special thanks and shout out for your request, Puppy Sparkles. However, you're not the only one that I'm going to be thanking today. I also want to give a very special thanks and shout out to artist Techronova for my shirt. Today's Within shirt I'm wearing is called the Waterful Dragon Within. What else could I wear than this shirt when we're talking about Magikarp and Gyarados? I think this is the greatest shirt I could have worn for today. If you really like these shirts that I wear in my videos, I have a link to Techronova's Etsy shop in the description below, so please check her out. Alright trainers, let's end Summer Splash with a very big one. And we're going to talk about the Pokemon that knows splashing better than anyone else, the little fishy itself, Magikarp! Magikarp the fish Pokemon is based on the Asian carp, which are also known as flying fish, and they can jump very high. Magikarp is also inspired by coin obori, which are fish-shaped windsocks. If you want to find Magikarp, just whip out your old rod and go fishing anywhere. Magikarp can be found anywhere in places of water. There are two different kinds of Magikarp because it has a gender difference. It's very easy to tell because of the whiskers. The male Magikarp has golden whiskers, while the female Magikarp has white whiskers. And, as you can tell, my Magikarp is a male. Magikarp can be found living in seas, lakes, rivers, and they even swim in shallow puddles. Basically, anywhere that there's water, you'll find one. These Pokemon are infamous for being unreliable and never going away. You may not believe it, but Magikarp has been around since the Stone Age, and in the distant past, they were somewhat stronger than their horribly weak descendants of today. Even though we have so many mythical Pokemon out there that have a lot of mystery surrounding it, the biggest one of all is how Magikarp has managed to survive. Not just because of how weak this Pokemon is, but how many other Pokemon enjoy eating on it. You'd think with how much Magikarp is devoured or pushed aside, it would have gone extinct by now. However, Magikarp are actually very hardy Pokemon, as they can survive in any body of water, no matter how polluted it is. This is very similar to that of Feebas, as both these Pokemon can swim in any kind of water. You want to hear something crazy? Well, whoever Magikarp's opponent is, and no matter how bad the attack it receives is, it won't do anything to Magikarp. It'll just flop around like nothing has happened. Some studies have shown that the reason that Magikarp are so plentiful in all bodies of water is because they're very fertile Pokemon. One Magikarp can have over 200 eggs in a year. Despite it always swimming, Magikarp's swimming muscles are extremely weak, so it's easily swept away by the current because it lacks both speed and power. Some people even believe that this Pokemon can't even swim. All that's happening is it's just floating around because of all the flailing. Magikarp is one of the few Pokemon that does not have pupils. Usually, it's kind of hard to tell whether Magikarp is asleep or not when not looking at its eyes. They just sit around and do nothing. Magikarp do nothing on land but splash and jump around. They can live on land for a very long time without water, and they can jump as high as 7 feet. Some of them can even jump as high as a mountain. However, some bird Pokemon pass by, catch them, and get a free meal while in flight. If you think I'm being too harsh on Magikarp, there are several Pokédex entries that call it as the world's weakest Pokemon, a pathetic excuse for a Pokemon, virtually useless, helpless, you name it, they have it in there. But I can't help but feel bad for Magikarp. But it does beg the question, why would Arceus create something like Magikarp? What was it thinking? Magikarp has the ability Swift Swim, which boosts its speed stat when it's raining. It also has the hidden ability Rattled. When Magikarp is hit with a Dark, Ghost, or Bug-type attack, or it gets intimidated, it boosts its speed stat. Magikarp made its main series debut in the Indigo League episode, Battle Aboard the St. Anne, where James purchased a Magikarp from a sleazy Magikarp salesman. People usually say be careful who you pick on, because things just might turn around. Well, that's exactly the case for Magikarp, because as time goes on, it gets even stronger. So, let's evolve Magikarp into Gyarados. Now, this Pokemon, after all the insults, truly becomes the bully of the sea. Gyarados the atrocious Pokemon is based on sea dragons as well as sea serpents. It also draws inspiration from Chinese dragon. However, what it takes the most inspiration from is none other than the legendary creature, the Kraken. You can find Gyarados living anywhere in the water, as they can live in all kinds, freshwater or saltwater, in any place at any temperature. Gyarados has a gender difference, and it's very easy to spot. When looking at the whiskers, the male Gyarados has blue whiskers, while the female has white whiskers. So, as you can tell, my Gyarados is a male. When Magikarp undergoes evolution and transforms into Gyarados, not only does its whole body change, its brain cells also undergo structural transformation. It's said that this transformation is to blame for Gyarados' unhinged and violent nature. Even though Gyarados doesn't have big fins, it's one of the fastest Pokemon in the water. Gyarados can swim from region to region in just an hour. It can even swim up a waterfall in just 10 seconds. Because of its brutal and ferocious nature, Almost all Pokemon swimming will immediately hide the moment Gyarados appears. The Gyarados also has a very big appetite, so whatever's around might just get devoured by it. It's no surprise that Gyarados has such a short fuse, but its rampage is another story, because once it's on a rampage, its ferocious and violent blood will never calm down until everything around it is cinders and ashes. Basically, until everything around it is destroyed. There are even records of Gyarados' rampage lasting an entire month. Gyarados' presence in either the seas or lakes nearby towns and cities is never a good sign. There are people who swear that any place Gyarados appears is fated for destruction. It can destroy an entire city with just one Hyper Beam. However, just like Tyranitar, Gyarados can even ravage mountains. Some of them are the shape they are because of Gyarados' powerful blast towards them. Gyarados has been around since the Stone Age. Yep, it's a living dinosaur. And even back in ancient times, it was known for destroying cities and towns. This Pokemon was feared by so many. Also, these Pokemon were known for bringing bad weather, very similar to that of Kyogre. The reason for this is because Gyarados always appeared during terrible storms for sailors. Some studies show that in times of conflict, Gyarados appears, as if it has a sixth sense of getting involved in wars. Some old stories even mention that Gyarados took part in many wars. You may not know it, but the flying typing on Gyarados isn't just for show. It can actually fly! According to ancient observers, Professor Laverton and his survey corps, Akari and Ray, they were the first people ever to confirm this all the way back in the Hisui region. Gyarados has the ability Intimidate, which makes their opponents cower in fear, lowering their attack stat by 1. However, if unlocked with the ability patch, Gyarados has the hidden ability Moxie, which boosts Gyarados' attack if it knocks out a Pokemon. Gyarados debuted in the Indigo League series episode, Pokemon Shipwreck, where James's Magikarp evolved into Gyarados after he kicked it in frustration. It retaliated with all the others using Dragon Rage. Gyarados sure is one powerful tyrant of the sea, but let me tell you, as destructive as Gyarados is, this is only a fraction of its true strength. You don't want to be on the other side when it unleashes superpower. Oops, I meant to say Mega Power. That's right, thanks to Professor Sycamore's research, Gyarados can Mega Evolve into Mega Gyarados. This is the true terror of the sea. It's become so vicious that Gyarados even traded its flying typing for Dark type. Mega Gyarados looks really cool, but let me tell you, Mega Evolution has a downside, as it also affects its brain and placed a burden on its body. The stress from going Mega also causes it to become more ferocious than ever. While you know that Gyarados already destroys everything around it, now destruction is all it does. It will never calm down. The moment it will calm down is when everything around it is burned to cinders. If it's in the water, Mega Gyarados jets water all around its sides through its orifices. It streaks above the water surface going at Mach speeds. This Pokemon is faster than a speedboat, and nothing can stop it. Even a heavy cargo ship caught in its path will be split in two. Also going Mega, its appetite has no bounds. Mega Gyarados will swallow and devour everything within its path. It'll make a meal out of everything, whether it's on the surface or underwater. Whatever goes into its mouth will never come out. When this Pokemon battles, it's been given a nickname, the Beast of the Sea. When it battles, although Mega Gyarados has the instinctive drive to decimate everything around it, it will, however, only respond from a trainer it trusts. Despite its unhinged nature, the bond between the trainer and Pokemon is the only thing that cannot be destroyed. Who would have guessed that this whole time, Gyarados was only using a fraction of its destruction power? They always say, sometimes going Mega can bring out the best or even the worst in you. It is honestly one of the most amazing Pokemon ever. I really do like that it also gained the Dark typing. It does reflect its brand new nature. Well, this is probably one of the scariest creatures of the sea, and also, it's probably one of the strongest. Magikarp and Gyarados are some of the most well-known Pokemon that came out of the first generation, and since they've been around for so long, both Gyarados and Magikarp have some amazing fun facts and tidbits about them. So, here's a few. Magikarp requires the fewest amount of steps to hatch from an egg, requiring only 200. Gyarados is tied with Pelipper for being the most common Pokemon found amongst Gym Leaders teams, as both of them have appeared on 7. On a cool note, both of them also share the same typing of water and flying. Magikarp and Gyarados are the only 2 Pokemon that can be encountered in the wild at the lowest and highest levels, because in Pokemon Platinum's Resort area, as well as Black and White 2's Nature Preserve, they can both be found at levels ranging from 1 to 100. In Pokemon Conquest, Magikarp is the only Pokemon that uses a move that does not share a type, as it only can use Splash. Gyarados in the Core Series game has been on a lot of people's teams. It's the first Pokemon sent out on the teams of Gym Leaders Crasher Wake and Claire, as well as it's the first Pokemon sent out by Lance when he's both an Elite Four member and a Champion. Gyarados serves as the second in command on the teams of Champion Wallace, Team Galactic Boss Cyrus, and Elite Four member Seabold's team. However, Gyarados is the signature Pokemon of Team Flare Boss Lysander. Gyarados and Magikarp have been able to be caught as well as acquired in every Core Series game and region to date. In Pokemon Ranger, Magikarp is one of the easiest Pokemon that you can capture, needing only to draw a single loop. Despite being a Flying-type Pokemon, Gyarados cannot learn any Flying-type moves through level up until Generation 7. In Generation 1, Magikarp and Seel were the only pure Water-type Pokemon that cannot learn any Water-type moves through level up. Both Gyarados and Celebi are the only 2 shiny Pokemon to be integrated into a game's plot. In almost all games, Magikarp can be found anywhere in the water, just by using the Old Rod. Currently, Gyarados is the only Pokemon to gain the Dark typing through Mega Evolution. Magikarp is one of 14 Pokemon that can have a foreign Pokedex entry for Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum. Mega Gyarados is currently the tallest Dark-type Pokemon. And at last, Magikarp and Feebas are very much alike. As they're both known as the fish Pokemon, they have the same base stat total, and both evolve into a Water Sea Serpent Pokemon. Magikarp and Gyarados are a crazy line. One is a dopey flopping fish that can't even swim, and the other is a tyrant and one of the most brutal creatures of the sea. However, despite the massive change, almost no Pokemon is without weakness. Magikarp and Gyarados are split, as Magikarp is a pure water type and Gyarados is both a water and flying type, as well as a water and dark thanks to Mega Evolution. Magikarp is a bad swimmer, and it has a few weaknesses to move, which are Grass type and Electric type. Only 2, so not so bad, but now let's evolve our little flopping fish into Gyarados. Now it gains the flying type, and it gains a brand new pool of weaknesses. When it fights, it's weak to moves, which are Rock type, and its biggest weakness is Electric type. Because of its dual typing, it now does ×4 damage. Normally, we would end things here, but nope, because Gyarados also has the power to go Mega, and it also gains the Dark typing over the Flying, it now has a whole new set of weaknesses. When in battle, it goes down hard against moves which are Fighting type, Bug type, Grass type, Electric type, and Fairy type. Wow, they all have different weaknesses and weakness pools, which is kind of impressive as they all gain a new typing through evolution. Well, now that we've seen what they're all weak to, let's see how strong they are in battle. Normally I'd say Magikarp's strengths, but since it doesn't learn a single water type move through level up or TM, let's evolve it back into Gyarados. Now that it's a water and flying type, it gains an edge in a fight with stab water and flying type moves, which are super effective against Pokemon who are Rock type, Fighting type, Fire type, Bug type, Grass type, and Ground type. But of course, Ground has a bonus. Because it's a flying type, Ground type moves won't do any damage to it. Pretty good strengths for Gyarados, but now let's go Mega and see the stab moves of its water and dark typing, which are super effective on Pokemon who are Fire type, Ghost type, Rock type, Ground type, and Psychic type. And since Mega Gyarados gains the Dark type is completely immune to Psychic type moves. This line is so cool for having so many divided weaknesses and typings. Well, what can you say? You're going into uncharted waters with these Pokemon. Magikarp and Gyarados have debatably one of the most amazing lines ever. How many Pokemon can you say do a major 180 through evolution? This line starts off as a flopping fish that can't even swim to save its own life. even called the most worthless Pokemon ever, to becoming one of the most devastating destructors of the ocean. We go from a fish to a sea dragon. Well, you know what they say, nothing wrong with being the underdog as long as you come out on top at the end. There are already so many amazing Pokemon from the water, but I find it fascinating that unlike so many, Magikarp and Gyarados can be found everywhere in any kind of water. I think I solved the mystery of why Magikarp has been around for so long, not just because of its evolution into Gyarados, but because both these Pokemon have learned to adapt to anything, no matter what, and can live in any water. I always thought of this line as Dragon-type, since so many Dragon-type specialists use Gyarados. I wish that we got the Dragon-type instead of the Dark-typing when it goes Mega. I also think that the Dragon-typing would look great for a regional variant, not just on Gyarados, but also on Magikarp too. With how many patterns it has, I would love to see what Magikarp would look like as a Dragon-type. Then again, it would be a floppy fish dragon. It's great that we can catch this line anywhere we go. Honestly, Magikarp and Gyarados is one of the reasons I love going fishing. It's one of my main staples in all of my journey, as you never know what you're gonna get. Plus, you could get something more than what you wanted. So yeah, be careful what you fish for. And when you go fishing with your rods, you just might find a Magikarp or a Gyarados at the end of your hook, line, and sinker. Welcome back, trainers. I hope you had a great time learning about the little floppy fish and the raging sea serpent. They're really cool Pokemon, and I also want to give you one final thank you, Puffy Sparkles. I hope that you enjoyed this video to the fullest. Sorry it took a little bit of time, but before we end, I just have a few questions for you. Are you a fan of the fishing feature in the world of Pokemon? If so, what was one of your favorite games to go fishing in, and what was the Pokemon you're the most proud of for getting? Since a lot of us encountered Gyarados as its shiny at the Lake of Rage, what's one of your favorite shiny Pokemon of all time? Also, who was the first shiny Pokemon you ever caught? Were you ever one of those who fell for the Magikarp salesman scam and bought yourself a Magikarp? Do you think it was well worth the 500 Pokédollars, or do you think you could have gone on without it? Since so many Dragon-type experts, like Lance and Claire, use Gyarados for their Dragon-type team, do you think that in the future we should get a Magikarp and Gyarados regional variant with the Dragon-typing, or are they fine the way they are? And out of all the Water-type Pokemon I covered in Summer Splash, who was your favorite I covered, as well as who is your favorite Water-type Pokemon of all time? I hope that you enjoyed Summer Splash, trainers. I had a wonderful time talking about so many Water-type Pokemon. Did I cover one of your favorite ones? Well, if you liked what you saw, then please leave a like. If you have any questions, you want to answer any of the questions I threw at you, you want me to maybe cover another Water-type Pokemon in the future, you want me to do Summer Splash next year, or you want me to talk about another Pokemon or Pokemon line, then please comment. And as always, if you liked what you saw and you want to see more, smash the subscribe button. As a Pokemon professor, it's my job to teach trainers like all of you. I hope you enjoyed Summer Splash, trainers. Maybe we can do it again next year. But till then, thanks for watching, trainers. Palm out.